All right, today let's talk about 3 ways to get a hormonal response from your training. This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm Jerred Moon, and I want to first talk about this in a conceptual nature, and then we'll get into like 3 specific ways that you can get more of this, you know, anabolic hormone, central nervous system activation type training that can help you get the hormones that you're looking to see from your training. Because I've noticed 2 things. One, and maybe this is my own echo chamber, but I feel like when my, extended family member who's not into fitness at all starts talking to me about zone 2 training, I feel like, okay, things have gotten a little crazy here. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with zone 2 training, but for some reason, people are acting like zone 2 training is the magic pill that's going to help you live forever. In reality, I'm a huge fan of zone 2 training for building your aerobic base and for the longevity benefits, but it can't be your only source of training. It's actually only good when it's in conjunction with other programming. And so I think you have to factor that in. Another thing that I noticed early on, I was a big fan of Louis Simmons, who has passed away a couple years ago, but he, had the strongest gym in the world, Westside Barbell. I followed him. Like I read most of his books. Like he's just got so much great information, but I don't know if there's anyone who talks more about the central nervous system in training more than Louis Simmons. And the reason being is because training the central nervous system is not necessarily an easy thing to do, but it does get you that anabolic hormone release, that hormonal response from training that we all want. You want to optimize that hormonal output. You're not going to really do that with zone 2 training. If anything, that's going to be more detrimental to it, especially loads and loads of endurance training. In this whole concept of training your central nervous system, that's ultimately what you need to be thinking of when you're wanting a hormonal response from your workout. You got to think, okay, how can I activate my central nervous system? Now, that's a very broad question that not everyone's going to ask themselves every day, but you have to think of your central nervous system as like this friend who sleeps super deep and like it's a huge pain in the ass to wake him up. It's like he partied hard. You can't wake him up very easily. You could slap him in the face, pour cold water on him. Eventually he'll wake up. And when he does wake up, he's like the best guy, right? He's the best guy to be around. He's a ton of fun, something like that. Hopefully that, metaphor will kind of stick, but ultimately that's what it is like with your central nervous system, because your central nervous system is not easily activated. It cannot be awoken easily. You have to go to these deep, dark places to activate your central nervous system. And so how you do that is kind of 2 ways. The first way is activating or incorporating a lot of muscle mass into your training. So just start thinking about that as thing 1 for activating, waking up the central nervous system. Is like, am I getting a lot of muscles involved? If you are getting a lot of muscles involved at a kind of higher, moderate to high intensity with these muscles, you are waking up the central nervous system. You are starting to activate it. That's the first thing that you have to know about it. And then the second thing is just going to be intensity. And this is how high are you taking the intensity level? Again, it's really hard to wake up the central nervous system, get it activated. But once you have it activated, it gets activated at that high intensity level. So those 2 things, am I getting a lot of muscles involved? Am I going high on the intensity factor for me specifically? If you can think conceptually like that, you are activating your central nervous system, and you don't have to necessarily stick to like, oh, Jerred said do these 3 things. These 3 things that I'm going to mention are something you probably already know and honestly proven by science, and I'll go over a few others. But if you can think conceptually about how to activate the central nervous system, you're going to be able to get that hormonal response more easily and maybe do different exercises that you like. So the 3 most proven ways, first is going to be heavy resistance training. So the hormonal response from heavy resistance training, it increases testosterone and growth hormone levels, especially when it's compound movement. So if you're thinking about the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, And all of these movements, like I said, they recruit a large amount of muscle mass and stimulate the central nervous system, which leads to a surge in anabolic hormones. So the execution here, the how-to, is you want to aim for lower rep ranges, 3 to 8 reps with heavier weights, and you want to do longer rest periods. So 2 to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that, for the maximum hormonal benefit, if that's what we're optimizing for. The second thing that you want to be factoring in is sprinting. A lot of people don't do this, and I think you need to ease into it. So don't go from desk job to running 100-meter sprints because I said so. You really got to ease into that. Make sure that you have really solid warm-ups. Start with shorter sprints, 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, because the chances of you pulling a hamstring if you sit a lot or don't sprint regularly, this sprinting is very much you use it or you lose it, okay? And sprinting is super important. But the hormonal response, it triggers testosterone and growth hormone spikes, sprinting does. And sprinting is powerful, explosive exercise that requires full body muscle engagement, and it stimulates fast twitch muscle fibers, which are linked to higher anabolic hormone release. So you want to do short bursts of maximum effort. Maximum effort when it's something that's more anabolic like this is not that hard. Okay, so we're talking about 6 to 10 seconds. And the rest periods, again, you want adequate rest periods. This could be 1, 2, 3 minutes. Think about it. I'm putting in 6 seconds of work. I'm resting 2 minutes. Like, you want to be really well rested and recovered because we're not trying to get to that aerobic zone. We're trying to stay anabolic. We're trying to stay explosive. And that will optimize the hormonal output. So we got heavy resistance training and sprinting. And the last one is high intensity interval training. So high intensity interval training increases growth hormone and can improve overall testosterone levels over time. It's something that you have to do more frequently. But the combination of high intensity bursts and short rest periods maximizes metabolic stress, which is linked also to hormonal responses. So the training tips for executing it, though, doesn't necessarily mean go do a 15-minute at Metcon, CrossFit Metcon, because you're going to call that high intensity interval training. What you actually want to do is perform intervals of 30 to 60 seconds of intense work followed by 30 to 60 seconds of rest. So exercises like burpees, jump squats, kettlebell swings can be particularly effective for the use of high intensity interval training. Now you could throw all these things, 1, 2, or all 3 into your training week. So say you had a sprint day, heavy resistance day, HIIT day, and then the other days were zone 2. That's a more balanced program that's giving you, let's focus on the mitochondria and longevity benefits of zone 2 training, but let's also get a hormonal response from these higher intensity training methodologies. Typically, most people can only do high intensity things 1 to 3 times a week. 3 is at the maximum. And I really feel like the sweet spot is 1 to 2 for most people, just because mentally over time, it becomes very, very demanding to keep doing high intensity stuff over and over. 3 times a week is very tough. So 1 time a week is gold because you know like, hey, this is the high intensity day. This is the day I'm going for that hormonal response. I'm going to get it. So you go for it and you can do that. Maybe you have it in you to do that one other day, but that's, again, just from my, from coach to human, coach to athlete, that's my official recommendation. Now, there are a lot of other ways that you can get this in. I'll just mention them without getting into everything. But if you're like, well, I don't like any of those. I don't like heavy resistance training, sprinting, high intensity interval training. Either way, you're going to have to wake up your central nervous system to get that hormonal response. But other things that you might want to look into, there's plyometric training, strongman training, Olympic weightlifting, circuit training, loaded carries because of how much of the body muscle mass it stimulates. And then body weight training can even do this if you have a really high effort, taking things to failure. And then endurance training with strategic sprints, so like fartlek training. You can still do this with running and other things. But the top 3, the gold standard, is going to be heavy resistance training, sprinting, high intensity interval training. So if you're looking to get a hormonal response from your training and you want to make sure that it's in there, go do those things and you will be better off for it. That's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.